Okay. We're coming in now. We have 157.
Okay,
So
so
registered. So 71, 74.
tell me when to start.
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay. It looks like I have a message from somebody that was just not started. We just started like a minute ago. Yeah. So you let me know. Okay, I think we're good to go. We will have 103.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Just a few little technical glitches, of course, but I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar. My name is Adell Erozer, and I'm the Executive Director at the Bishop Parker Foundation. For those of you who don't know me, previously I was the Executive Director at Turning Points, the nonprofit in Bradenton, for 17 years. But I've been with the Bishop Parker Foundation now for a little over 2 years. And I'm very excited to share this with you this morning. I hope that you'll be able to get some good information. We decided we needed to provide this webinar because of the people seeking funding that had talked to us that really weren't grant writers and didn't have a lot of experience in how to apply for grants. So this is actually geared towards those people who are not grant writers or those who may not have a lot of experience with computers and making applications online. So for those of you who already are experienced or have done this before, bear with us because I think you'll have some information that will help you, give you some insights into what we're looking for this year, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you also. We're going to be having this session mainly provided information first, and then at the end we will have a question and answer session. So as we're going through, if you come up with a question, be sure and click the chat box, go ahead and put your question in, and at the end we'll be taking those questions and hopefully have the answers for you. I know there are some people who have registered who are new to our organization, so I thought I would just start with a little bit of the history about the foundations, how they got started. It all began when John Huntington and his wife Jane moved to the United States in 1854. They had nothing, but they managed to amass a large fortune, mainly because he was a big entrepreneur. He had many inventions, and also because of his big partnership with John D. Rockefeller in transporting oil. So that was the major part of how this foundation was funded, with the fortune from these people. But also his children, one of them who was William Huntington, he was also a businessman and amassed his own fortune through his business connections. And his daughter was Lillian, also known as Patty Huntington, who was then married to Edward Bishop, who also had his own wealth because of their family in Cleveland, Ohio, which provided soda fountain business and manufacturers of plumbing fixtures. So basically the fortune started in Cleveland, Ohio, but both families eventually had some family down in Florida where they visited during vacations, and they fell in love with it. Ned and Patty did, and they moved down here in 1914 and settled in Bradenton. But they did travel extensively, so they weren't here all the time. While in Bradenton, the Bishops were active in civic and cultural life in the Bradenton area, and they made generous and impactful gifts to many of the organizations, usually anonymously, that you see today in both Bradenton and the Sarasota area. The Bishops met Mary Parker, a graduate nurse in New York City, in 1934, and they invited her to be their companion nurse, which it was a role that she fulfilled for their entire lifetime. And after her biological parents were deceased, they actually adopted Mary Parker as their daughter. So she inherited that fortune, Also, and she had her own fortune and had her own foundation that she started. So there were two foundations, the Bishop Foundation and the Mary Parker Foundation. Mary gave very generously from her own account also during her time here in Bradenton. And in 2020, Mary passed at the age of 108. And her legacy lives on, and she's given so much to this community. We will be doing some kind of public acknowledgement of all the generous donations the Bishops and the Parkers and Mary Parker made in the future. So keep your eye out for that. When I became executive director 2 years ago, the two foundations were planning to become legally combined, a process that took more than a year and a half. Now they are legally combined in Florida under the Mary E. Parker Foundation name, doing business as the Bishop Parker Foundation. So I'm going to have you start looking at our website, which is kind of what we're going to use to go through this webinar so that you can become familiar with it and with the information that we have in there. During the transition time, the past 2 years, many changes have taken place in the foundation, most notably the addition of 2 trustees and also how we change the application process, how grants are solicited. Previously, only charities that were supported by the Bishops and Mary received hard copy invitations to apply for funding each year. But after Mary's passing, the trustees decided to change this process to consider being more responsive to the many diverse needs in our community. The application process was opened to all nonprofits and all nonprofits as it is today, serving Manatee County individuals and animals. Also, the application process was moved online, and application consideration periods went from once a year, which is what they had in the past, to twice a year, starting 2 years ago with one application in the spring and one in the fall. We have so many new applications from nonprofits that have never been funded by the foundation before that. For instance, last fall, we had 57 applications. So the competition for funding has increased dramatically. Each cycle I hear from some organizations that didn't get funding asking, what can they do? What did they do wrong? Or how could they change something to improve their application? But actually, the answer is there's not enough funding for every request. So the trustees have some very difficult choices to make when they're looking at applications. How they make these decisions about applications is primarily based on the information you provide in your applications. So I would like to review our website with you and direct you to some items that may be helpful as you consider your application. First of all, you will need to take the eligibility quiz to determine if your organization is even able to qualify for funding. See where it says eligibility requirements, and then learn more. This quiz is on the homepage, as you see, just under eligibility requirements. So as we go through what your organization must have, they must have a 501c3 nonprofit tax status. You must have your tax ID number with that. Your project must be located in or serving a Manatee County population. Many of our people who apply have projects in multiple counties, which is fine. But I'll talk a little bit later about how that we would need more information about how you actually serve Manatee County residents. Your organization must also have an up-to-date profile with the giving partner, and your funding request is $10,000 or more. So those two little asterisks are important. You will, when you answer this question, the eligibility quiz, whether you have an up-to-date profile with the giving partner, you will be prompted to send in the link to your organization's profile. I guess one quick note I want to say, if you scroll down just a little bit more where it says the grant eligibility quiz and the capital grant eligibility quiz in red, those two things are not open right now. They will open when the application portal opens on March 1st. But I just wanted to point it out. I'm sure there are people who are clicking it now, but it doesn't open until then. But it'll bring up these 4 questions. And if your organization, why do we have to have a giving partner profile? I get that question often. We are trying to make our application process as efficient and easy as possible for you. And remember, I am only a part-time executive director, so I do not have time to go and get all the information I need individually in your application. It's just overwhelming for the trustees. So what we have is the giving partner profile to refer to, and that gives us all the information, basic information that we need. It gives you the tax ID information that we need, the 990s, the audits, your operating budgets, and it gives us some board information and also the program information that you might have that you're proposing or also that you're already serving. It gives an idea of what the history of the organization is. So in preparation for applying, please take the next couple of weeks and ensure that your profile in the giving partner has your most recent financial and operational information. It's very important. If, for example, your year end is June 30th, 2022, and you are expecting your audit or 990 to be completed any day, please state this in your application. And when you do receive your documents, please email them in to us as soon as possible. Our review process takes several months. So even though you may not have something on March 29th, when the portal closes, you should have it soon thereafter. If your, for instance, if your fiscal year ended in June 30, 2022. If you do not have a profile in the giving partner, you can use the Ask a Question box, which is located on the Grant Tools heading on the home page. On the home page, it's down below under the Grant Tools. It says Ask a Question in red there. Yeah, you can ask a question and then send that to us and say, I don't have a profile in the giving partner, and you will have to explain why you do not. Because most of the people that we have making applications are members of the giving partner. When you're prompted to provide a link to your organization's profile to the giving partner, please check to ensure that it's your organizational profile link. Last year, several organizations sent me the link to their giving challenge information instead of their giving partner profile. So it's appreciated if you just check that to make sure. Our foundation only accepts funding requests that are for over 10,000. This has to do with the question below. All other requests are processed through a fund that we maintain at the Manatee Community Foundation. They have a grants committee meeting almost every month to review grant requests. So if you have an immediate need, this may be a better option or alternative for you to apply for. However, the fund we maintain there will not address animal welfare requests. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. The portal will close at 4 o'clock on March 29th. There is no consideration for applications in process that are not submitted by that time. So please make sure that you get everything done. Our advice is to enjoy a positive experience would be to familiarize yourself with all the application requirements so that you're prepared once the portal opens on March 1st. All the questions for both the general application and the capital application are available for you to preview at any time by clicking on the application checklist. You scroll down just a little bit where it says application checklist, or the capital grant this is the capital also grant application checklist. They're separate because they have the capital is exactly the same, except it has some other documents that will need to be uploaded. A great way to complete this application is to answer the questions offline using your Word document, and then cut and paste your answers into the application once the portal opens. That way, if there's any problem with your application submission, you don't have to go back and rewrite everything. And please don't wait until March 29th to submit your application. There's so many things that can go wrong. Believe me, I speak from experience, a bad experience. The internet can go down, there's glitches in the submission, and so many unexpected things can also happen. So please don't wait until the last minute. The limitations on descriptions for each question, these are in the grant application when you're answering the question. This is meant to help you focus just on the essential information for your project. Why is it needed? What impact can reasonably expected? And how will you know if it's successful? We don't need information about your organization, its history, any of these kinds of things, because we get that information by reviewing your giving partner profile. We need to know why your project should be funded, so you can focus your explanation on providing that essential information. And this is basically why there are not unlimited number of characters for you to use. The limitations are for the number of characters, and this includes the space, not the number of words. For those of you who are new to this, if you are using Microsoft Word, you will see word count as the third item from the left on the toolbar on the top. And you can use this to monitor your character count and make sure that you're fulfilling the number of characters you need. For those of you considering a capital request, there's a separate application. It's exactly the same as a general application, but requires uploads of documents that are relevant to your project, such as permitting approval or design and architectural drawings, or anything else that might be applicable to your project. It also requires an upload of a timeline for completion, and provisions of your budget information showing how the grant from our foundation fits into your overall capital campaign. If you don't have a capital campaign, for instance, if you're applying for something, let's say you wanted to buy a piece of equipment, then obviously you wouldn't need this. But for those of you who are looking at construction or additions or something like that, we would need to have these things before you apply. If you have a question about that, again, use the ask a question box on the front, on the home page. I often get asked the question, what's the difference between a general request and a capital request? Well, capital requests are funding for a fixed asset, such as major equipment purchase, some kind of renovation, new construction, or any addition that would increase the property value or extend the life of property or alter or adapt the use of your property. For example, repairing roof tiles is not a capital expense, but replacing a whole roof would be. If you have a question, just use the question box under the grant tools heading there. Okay, so then let's go to the grant application page. I think that's up on the top. Applications, where you look under grant seekers. It can be grant applications there. We put links in several different places. Grant applications is also under grant seekers. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 cycles available every year for grants. And if you're considering a project, but you don't have all the information you need, it's not totally planned out, or you just aren't ready, please don't submit something. This is a very competitive grant application, and you will need to justify all aspects of your submission. So submitting something before you're ready really is not good for you, and it's also just wasting your time and hours. So there is another grant application cycle opening in September. So you might be looking at something and considering maybe a new project, and you need to get all the information together. Please submit it then later. It's available in September to look at. But I think some of the applications that came in last year were just too early and didn't have enough information, especially about the impact that they thought they were going to have. Uploads. So additional files that you need. If you're, well, I guess first is the timeline for your project or program. We would like to see what date are you going to be able to start your program? What date is it going to be implemented? And what date do you expect it to be over, or when you're going to be judging the results or tracking the results? If your funding request is for operations for a year, please tell us that and outline when the results can be determined. If it's a construction project, for example, please upload your construction timeline. And obviously, if it is for something like equipment purchase or something one time only, there's no implementation timeline, but we would still expect to see some kind of timeline of when your item will be purchased and used. And if it's for something like a capital expenditure for an equipment, we would want to see at least 3 bids for each thing that is going to be purchased. Your current total operating budget, this seems to be confusing. This means your entire organizational operating budget for your fiscal year, not from July or from January 1st to December 31st, but for the fiscal year of your organization. The operating budget is the whole organization budget. And if you have a separating operating budget for the program or project that you are applying for, include that, because that's what we would really be looking at also. For example, when I was at Turning Points, we had an organizational budget and a budget for each of the programs we provided, and these were separate. So we're looking not only for your overall budget, but for the project or program also, and how the money from Bishop Parker might fit in for that program. So both of these budgets need to be uploaded. In addition, the last item there is the line item budget for the project or program. And this is where you would list the funding you are requesting and what it will be used for. For example, for a program, you may be requesting funding for salaries or equipment, training, and supplies. Each of these would need to be listed separately on a line with the proposed expenditure next to it, so we can see exactly what the money is going to be used for. You can highlight each item that you are requesting funding for. If it is just one item out of a list of items for a program, that helps us to see quickly what you're going to be using it for. And basically, we just want to know how you came to the amount you are requesting. So it's very helpful if you have estimates for the items you are proposing, if you are purchasing or paying for, or a history of salaries. You will need to have approval of your organization's executive director and board president. So they need to be aware that you're applying and be sure they're going to be available to sign off on your organization's application. Several people last year didn't realize that one of the people was going to be gone during that month. So when it came time to sign their application, they were not available. So please make sure that these 2 people are going to be able to sign your application before it's submitted. And please take heed of the browser compatibility. Using one of those will give you the best experience. Also, very important, please review the information about saving your application. Again, we had some people last year who did not see this and had gone in and had completed their application, and when they came back to what they thought was it was completely blank and they did not have their application saved in Word. So again, this is a good reason to finish off your application offline and then cut and paste it in. So if something like that happens, at least you have that to go back to. If you have any kind of experience with completing or submitting your application and it doesn't look like it's going through, or you're having any problem, please use the technical assistance form located at the bottom of the grant application. Yes, right there. So if you're having a problem with something or you have a question about the application itself, please use that form and your problem will be addressed, hopefully within 48 hours, it says on there, but actually it's usually much sooner. If you have a question about funding, then please use the Ask a Question form in the grant tools box that we showed you at the home page at the beginning. So after the March 29th submission deadline, what happens? Well, usually I prepare all the information from the applications for the trustees to review. They have about 2 or 3 meetings in each grant period to review all of these submissions, and they may request live presentations from organizations they would like more information from. The review process can be impacted by many things, especially the busy schedules of our trustees, but they plan to finish with the approval process in order to approve grants at their June meeting for the spring grant cycle and in November for the fall grant cycle. So usually payments are made either in June and July for the spring and either in November or December for the fall. All applicants, everybody who applied, will get notification of either grant approval or denial, and it's notification by email. Now we are providing payments using direct deposit to organization accounts. So successful applicants will be asked to provide us with their ACH transfer information so that we can make a direct deposit. Last of all, I just want to say a word about animal welfare. So animal welfare, I know it's confusing. Back on, yeah. Animal welfare, it's confusing because I get many questions about us being the Bishop Animal Shelter. And in fact, I often get phone calls from people who need assistance with their animals. As you may know, in March of 2022, the Bishop SPCA Foundation formally turned over their operations of the Bishop Animal Shelter located in West Bradenton to Manatee County government. The bishops had provided for this shelter by setting up a totally separate foundation, the Bishop SPCA Foundation, which assisted with funding their animal shelter. But once operations were turned over to the county, the funding previously used for this operation was made available for granting. Their foundation is working to provide a separate grant process for animal welfare, independent from our Bishop Parker Foundation. But until that is up and running, we will continue to take requests for animal welfare projects, but we'll be forwarding these to the Bishop SPCA Foundation for their consideration. And I'm not quite sure what will happen in the future. I'm sure we will still be partnering with them for animal welfare, but hopefully this answers your questions about those two foundations. So I hope I provided the information that you need to feel confident in making an application. Are there any questions?
For organizations who serve multiple counties, what percentage of services or number of people would the program need to serve from Manatee County to qualify for funding consideration?
There's a good answer, or good question. There's no specific percentage, but if you were asking for $1 million and you only served 10% Manatee County population, obviously that would be a consideration. So the amount of funding you're seeking should somewhat correlate to the number of people that are going to be served in Manatee County, or not people or animals, whatever the population is.
Yeah, someone was asking how to access the checklist. I think we went over that. There's nothing else in here so far. What is the foundation's position on multi-year pledges, reducing the number of applications if the program is approved for funding?
Good question again. So if you are asking, let's just say for $1 million for a construction project, you may want to consider asking if it's available for you or it's good for your organization to ask in multiple years. So $1 million could be $400,000 the first year, $300,000 the next 2 years. It makes it easier for us sometimes, depending on the amount of funding that we have available to pass out. So there's no right or wrong answer for that. Again, it's mostly based on the needs of your organization and when you need the money and whether you would be able to handle multi-year versus 1 year. Any other questions?
Oh, okay. If you applied last year's grant cycle and received funding, can you apply again, or would the organization need to apply the next year?
If you applied in the fall It depends on what you're applying for. So again, many large organizations have several different programs. If you applied and got funding for one program and you wanted to see if you could get funding for another program separate from what you got funding for in the fall, yes, you could apply this year. Or if you applied last year and received money in the spring cycle, you could apply this year in the spring cycle. So hopefully that answers your question. Is there a place on the grant application to show measured results to date? And is this necessary? There is nothing on the application to show that. But again, this application is your lifeline to consideration for funding. So if you have some results that are outstanding and you think would show what you're able to do with more funding, then certainly include that in your application.
And then a question was, we received a grant last year and the project will be finished in May. Are we eligible to apply this spring?
Yes, you can apply this spring for, if it's the exact same project and it'll be finished in May, you wouldn't be getting funding until June or July. So that would start a new year. So yes, you would be eligible to apply for the exact same project possibly.
Is there a general cap on the amount of a single grant?
There is no general cap on the amount of any request. We base it on what is the amount that you need. So I know I get a question many times, what's the best amount to ask for? Well, the best amount to ask for is what you need. It's not a number out there. It's what does the organization need to be able to provide the service that you're looking to provide.
Do you prefer not to be the single funder for a project?
It's always preferable to be collaborating as a funder, especially if it's a large project. That we don't have a preference if it's a smaller project, no.
One of the biggest mistakes made with this grant application?
Well, hopefully I've answered that, but I guess the biggest mistakes that you can make is to give us what I call fluff in the description of your project or what you need the money for. We need to know specifically, what are you going to be using it for? What impact is it going to be having in the community? And providing a bunch of extraneous information, filling the box with so that you have all of your characters fulfilled does not really help you. So be very clear on what your organization needs, why you need it, and what impact it'll have if you're funded.
And then when will the fall applications open?
The fall application opens September 1st and it will close on September 29th.
If you apply in the spring and are turned down, can you apply for the fall?
Very good question. Absolutely. Again, being turned down does not mean they're turning down your project. It could just mean that it's such a competitive process that they just didn't have the funding available in the spring. So yes, you can apply again each cycle.
Can you apply for a capital grant and a general grant in the same year?
That's a very good question. You can apply, you probably wouldn't get both of them funded. But whichever one, you may want to make a preference when you do. If you did apply for both of them, you might say, our preference is the capital project or our preference is the general application.
Does the grant need to be a single project or can it be multiple projects that meet similar goals?
It can be multiple projects that meet similar goals.
Then how can an organization be certain that project falls within your funding priorities?
Oh, very good question. So the funding priorities of the foundation are listed on that home page. There's 6 of them. And again, if you scroll down just a little bit.
Let me go back and share this.
Yeah. If you click on any one of those, let's click on education. So those are the 6 interest areas of the organization, and it gives you a little description for each one. So you can kind of get an idea whether or not your organization project may fit into one of those 6 interest areas.
Okay. Okay, so that's that one. Do animal welfare organizations need to take any extra steps to ensure their application is forwarded to the Bishop SPCA, or is this automatic?
Good question. Your application will come to us and we will automatically forward it to the Bishop SPCA for this grant cycle. And I'm hoping, or I'm assuming that by the fall that may change, but for the spring grant cycle, that will be the process.
Can an organization get feedback as to why they were unapproved? Denied?
Again, this is a question that we get many times. Usually it's not because the project wasn't a great project. It usually has to do with the availability of funding and the priorities that the trustees have based on all the other applications they received that cycle. So it's not, I don't think I've ever seen a project that was just so bad that we would never have approved it. It's just that there's just a limited amount of resources available, and it's the priorities of the trustees during that cycle that determine how that money is going to be spent.
For a purchase required before the June payment, will the foundation refund or pay for retroactive purchases?
No, this would not be something we would be able to do. If you needed to buy something before the June payment, I would consider looking at the less than the 10,000 or less, because they consider those on a monthly basis at the Manatee Community Foundation. So that would probably be the best route for you to take.
Anything else?
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending. This website will, or this webinar will be posted on our website. So if you want to go back and maybe, I don't know why you would want to listen to it me again, but you may want to go back and just see if you've got all the information you thought you had. It will be available to you. And thank you for attending, and good luck in your grant writing.